Welcome to another C1 Advanced ESL-lounge reading lesson video. Today we will be reading 4 literary scholars' views on the legacy of Charles Dickens to understand their different critical arguments about his work. Let's begin with some vocabulary. Benevolence, the quality of being well-meaning, kindness. Caricature, an exaggerated description of someone's main features. Conception, the way in which something is perceived or regarded, an idea. Consciousness, a person's awareness or perception of something. Diminishes, makes something seem less important. Duality, the state of having two parts, often with opposite meanings. Episodic, containing or consisting of a series of separate parts or events. Innovator, a person who introduces new methods, ideas, or products. Paternalistic, relating to a system in which an authority regulates conduct and supplies needs in a fatherly manner. Pamphleteering, the activity of writing and distributing short booklets, often on a political subject. Perceptive, having or showing sensitive insight. Virtuosity, great skill in music or another artistic pursuit. Great, now you know the key words, let's read the texts. You are going to read 4 interpretations from literary scholars on Charles Dickens. Read them carefully to understand each scholar's critical argument. Afterwards, you will answer 10 questions to check your interpretation of each scholar's viewpoint. Okay, let's start with text A. Dr. Eleanor Vance. Dickens's most profound and perhaps most radical contribution was the elevation of the child's perspective to a central position in serious literature. Before him, children in novels were often simplistic, sentimentalized figures. Dickens, however, gave them a complex inner life, viewing the bewildering and often cruel adult world through their innocent yet perceptive eyes. This narrative strategy was not merely a device for emotional effect, it was a powerful tool for social critique. He was known to be a keen amateur magician in his private life. By forcing the reader to experience the impersonal brutality of institutions like the workhouse or the legal system through the consciousness of a vulnerable child, he exposed their inherent inhumanity in a way that political pamphleteering never could. He weaponized empathy, and in doing so, he irrevocably changed our cultural conception of childhood itself. His novels are not just stories, they are foundational texts in the history of human rights. End of text A. Let's continue. Professor Julian Croft. To focus solely on Dickens as a social reformer, as is so often the case, is to do him a disservice. It diminishes his primary genius, which was that of a supreme entertainer and a linguistic innovator of breathtaking virtuosity. Dickens was, first and foremost, a master at weaving a tale who understood the mechanics of suspense and melodrama better than any author before or since. His novels were consumed by his readers in serial installments, requiring a cliffhanger at the end of each chapter to ensure the public would buy the next one. This commercial pressure forged his episodic, rollercoaster-like narrative style, a fact many modern readers forget. Furthermore, his prose is a riot of metaphor, wit, and astonishingly inventive caricature. We remember his characters not because they are realistic, but because they are unforgettable linguistic creations, larger than life. He also wrote several successful travelogues. To read him only as a historical document is to miss the sheer exhilarating joy of the performance. End of text B. Let's continue. Dr. Kenji Tanaka. The enduring relevance of Dickens's work, I contend, lies not in the specific social ills he depicted, most of which have long since been reformed, but in his timeless portrayal of the modern city's psychological landscape. Dickens was the first great urban novelist, and he understood the city as a place of profound and bewildering contradictions. He often walked for miles through London at night. In his novels it is simultaneously a space of exhilarating opportunity and of crushing anonymity, a network of tight-knit communities, and a chaotic maze of alienated individuals. This duality is the essential experience of modern urban life, as true today as it was in the 19th century. his lasting genius is not in his plots, which are often sentimental and improbable, but in his ability to capture this complex, fragmented, and deeply unsettling urban consciousness. He gave us the language to describe the experience of being alone in a crowd. End of text C. Let's continue. Professor Isabel Rossi. While I admire Dickens's narrative energy and his campaigning zeal, we must be cautious about placing him on too high a pedestal. A modern reading of his work reveals a worldview that is, in many respects, deeply conservative. He fathered 10 children with his wife Catherine. His solution to social injustice is rarely a call for systemic change or a radical redistribution of power. Instead, it is almost always located in the benevolence of a wealthy, paternalistic individual, a kind-hearted benefactor who mysteriously appears to rescue the hero. This pattern reveals a profound faith in the existing class system, merely hoping for its more humane application rather than its transformation. This reliance on private philanthropy rather than public reform suggests a profound distrust of the masses and a desire to maintain the existing social hierarchy. He exposes the symptoms of a sick society with brilliant clarity, but he ultimately endorses a cure that is sentimental and profoundly anti-radical, reinforcing the very class structures he appears to critique. Okay, time for a few questions to check your understanding. Question 1. Which scholar argues that Dickens's primary talent was in his skill as a writer and storyteller? Pause the video now to think about your answer. The correct answer is B, Professor Julian Croft. The text says his primary genius was that of a supreme entertainer and a linguistic innovator, which refers to his skill as a storyteller and writer. Question 2. Which scholar claims that Dickens's portrayal of a specific environment is the key to his continued importance? Pause the video now to think about your answer. The correct answer is C, Dr. Kenji Tanaka. The text states that Dickens's enduring relevance lies in his timeless portrayal of the modern city's psychological landscape. Question 3. Which scholar believes Dickens's work was instrumental in changing public attitudes towards the young? Pause the video now to think about your answer. The correct answer is A, Dr. Eleanor Vance. The text claims he irrevocably changed our cultural conception of childhood itself, which means he changed public attitudes. Question 4. Which scholar suggests that Dickens's answers to social problems were usually traditional in shape? Pause the video now to think about your answer. The correct answer is D, Professor Isabel Rossi. The text argues that his solution is rarely a call for systemic change or a radical redistribution of power, suggesting his answers were traditional, not radical. Question 5. Which scholar explains how the method of publication influenced the structure of the novels? Pause the video now to think about your answer. The correct answer is B, Professor Julian Croft. The text explains that because the novels were published in serial installments, they required a cliffhanger at the end of each chapter. Question 6. Which scholar argues that Dickens used a particular narrative viewpoint as an instrument for social commentary? Pause the video now to think about your answer. The correct answer is A, Dr. Eleanor Vance. The text states that the narrative strategy of using a child's perspective was a powerful tool for social critique. Question 7. Which scholar disputes the common interpretation of Dickens as a genuine social progressive? Pause the video now to think about your answer. The correct answer is D, Professor Isabel Rossi. The text claims his worldview is in many respects deeply conservative, which disputes the idea that he was a social progressive. Question 8. Which scholar views Dickens's characters as triumphs of literary style over lifelike depiction? Pause the video now to think about your answer. The correct answer is B, Professor Julian Croft. The text says we remember his characters, not because they are realistic, but because they are unforgettable linguistic creations. Question 9. Which scholar argues that two of Dickens' strongest characters were isolation and opportunity? Pause the video now to think about your answer. The correct answer is C. Dr. Kenji Tanaka. The text describes the city in his novels as a space of both exhilarating opportunity and crushing anonymity, which the question cleverly refers to as being like two strong characters. Question 10. Which scholar suggests Dickens's ultimate faith was in individual kindness rather than collective action? Pause the video now to think about your answer. The correct answer is D. Professor Isabel Rossi. The text argues his solution is almost always the benevolence of a wealthy, paternalistic individual, which is an example of individual kindness. Let's quickly summarize the lesson. On this screen you can review the main points of the text and the key vocabulary. Finally, here are a few discussion questions. Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching this ESL Lounge video. Don't forget to subscribe for more lessons, and we'll see you in the next one.